Very good morning to New Zealand and Kinga Masztalerz.
Kinga Masztalerz, yes. Hello. Hello.
How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm very good. It's a beautiful summer here in New Zealand.
It looks,
In the morning, I guess exactly opposite to where you are.
I'm in Montreal. It's cold, it's snowy, but I like it. It's good to experience the extremes of weather a little bit. Whereabouts in New Zealand are you, Kinga?
Right now I'm on the North Island, close to the West Coast.
And how long have you been there?
6 years now.
6 years. So
Not a whole 6 years here, but 6 years in New Zealand, yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the Red Bull X-Alps. It's your second time. You competed in 2019.
Yeah, I'm quite excited. Apparently, I'm a first woman to ever be qualified twice, which itself, it's like, as I said before, at least I'm first at something. So,
Right.
and it's super exciting because when I qualified for the first time, I was mostly scared and feeling really like the whole thing was out of my league, because I was just, when I qualified for the first time, I've been flying not even 5 years, and I was overwhelmed and with who am I to race with all these great athletes and legends and some of the best pilots in the world. So I slightly I made so many mistakes during preparation, during the race itself, so many lessons, but at the same time, I learned so much, and I really can't wait to put it into all these lessons into practice and see where it takes us this time, because it's like it feels very different to do it the second time. It feels definitely like a very different experience already, and we haven't even started.
It is the ultimate adventure race. It's got to be the ultimate adventure race on the planet. It is. The
Red Bull X-Alps, it's the most epic thing you can really think of, in my opinion. It's the most epic race. It's the most epic adventure race. But like, there's so many elements coming to play. So many skills that are needed. Not only from an athlete, but the whole teamwork, and it's so long and so massive. The sheer scale of the challenge is so massive. It's really hard to wrap your head around it, and I guess this is why I slightly panicked the first time I was doing it, and also this is why I'm so excited to have a chance to do it again, because there's nothing comparable to Red Bull X-Alps. There's just
Anybody watching who's not familiar with it, just tell them the distance and how many days. Explain a little bit about what the Red Bull X-Alps actually is.
What the race actually is?
Yes.
Yes, so 33, let's say elite chosen qualified athletes are supposed to travel the route that always starts in Salzburg, in Austria, and the finish line is always in Monaco, on the beach, and the actual route and waypoints on the way change with every time. It happens every other year, so it's like our hike and fly Olympics, let's say.
Right.
And the route changes every time, and actually it becomes more and more challenging and longer every time. So already last year it was more than 1,100 kilometers, zigzagging and crossing the main ridge of the Alps 3 times, and over some really rough and high alpine terrain, and some turn points were like Titlis above 3,000 meters above the so the term, it's becoming more and more interesting every time, more challenging and longer, and the idea is that we have to cover this distance only flying a paraglider or hiking with our paragliders on our backs. So obviously it's way faster and more efficient to fly, and no one ever really does very well only by hiking. It's first of all, it's paragliding race, but also great physical shape, and many dozens, hundreds of kilometers on the ground with a backpack are necessary to make progress. So, and I've done it only once, but veterans there are guys who've been doing it for decade or even longer. They say that the pace and level, and not only route but also the athlete's preparation and the pace of the race and the level of competing is becoming higher and higher every time. So yeah, this is what Red Bull X-Alps is, I guess.
What is the qualification process? How do you get to that final list?
You when the application phase is open, various athletes and pilots can apply. Basically, everyone can apply to Red Bull X-Alps. You fill quite a detailed form. It's not only about your paragliding flying skill level, but also about your mountain experience and endurance races or adventures and various other things out there. Of course, it's one thing is to be a good pilot, I guess, for what I understand, what Christoph Weber, who is a race director, always explains. One thing is to be a good pilot, and another thing is to be a good endurance athlete, to understand the mountains, because it's a very different if you flew some great distance on the flatlands and never flew in the mountains, etc. So it's obviously the specific of this race. It's a pure mountain experience, and also they really pay attention about on the safety matter, because making decisions in this race, it's so crucial, and it's so easy to make. Even great pilots have had accidents in this race, because the pressure is massive, because you really want to fly, not hike, and also so it may be a good motivation to fly in the conditions that you wouldn't fly normally on your leisure day, obviously, and also after a few days everybody gets really tired because there's never enough sleep and the massive body exhaustion and stress and everything coming together. It's easy to make a mistake. So also during the qualification process, they pay attention on the past adventures and right or wrong decisions that pilots have made in the past. Because everybody wants to have great and thrilling but still safe adventure.
Yeah.
And actually the last race in 2019, I think it was the very first one that actually no one got hurt in any way. No broken ankles, no twisted, no. Yes. So it just, the fact that it's the first time in the history of this race just tells you how extreme the whole experience is. Yeah. Incredible. Because even after this very, very, very particular and very, very detailed qualification process, we all know that athletes participating are not beginners who do stupid things out of nowhere, but still just some bad things can happen. So it's just Red Bull X-Alps, I guess. Yeah.
The emotions as well. Tell me about 2019. You must have gone to some extreme sensations of achievement, but also some dark places as well in such an endurance.
Are you asking about my personal experience, or? Yes, as I mentioned, I wasn't quite mentally ready for the sheer scale of this challenge, and I dreamt about participating in it since I first heard about it on the very first on my very first season when I was just learning how to thermal, and the idea that back then I didn't have much idea about the actual beaving or of real hike and fly. So the idea that you can cover so much distance throughout the Alps just hiking and flying, it just completely blew my mind. So I was like, I would so love to do it one day. And then of course my friend's like, yeah, right, I mean, come on. It's just funny but and when I qualified to Red Bull X-Alps, I on the one hand I was absolutely thrilled to do it. On the other hand, I just realized what did I put myself into? You know, it's just it's like I'm nowhere close to these athletes that participate there. And it was partially true. It was partially, of course, the level of the athletes in Red Bull X-Alps and the level of professional preparation is also very different. It's very different to be Kriegel Mauer has a very different level of experience and preparation than some of the rookies that participate for the first time and never come back. So it's now I know that I shouldn't have panic so much. But this is what I was at this point. So I was preparing as well as I could. I was mostly concerned about my flying level, because I still don't have as much experience as some of these great alpine pilots out there, even less before my first X-Alps, and I was also very concerned about my physical preparations. I was training hard, and actually at the end, the most of the problems that I encountered during the race weren't absolutely connected, neither with my flying nor with my physical preparation. Apparently, I was quite well prepared physically, and when I was finally in the air, calm and happy, I was actually flying quite well. Again, I'm not no Kriegel, but I was quite happy with my flying. But obviously, I underestimated how much more complex this race is. It's not about hiking and flying only. First of all, it's about making right decisions and being in right places in right time. And this one takes a lot of groundwork, a lot of good teamwork, and a lot of calm mind to really understand when to stop and think for a moment instead of just like running toward it, or when to put your head down and just hit the road and jog next 20 kilometers instead of waiting that maybe it will open, maybe not. And this is something that's extremely difficult to prepare for when you don't really know what you are preparing for. When you just seen the X-Alps on the social media and read about it or watch the official promotion materials, it's or even when you talk to some very experienced athletes, it's difficult to really grasp this specific. So at this level, we've made massive mistakes, and they another thing about it is because it's so long. After even when you lose 2 hours per day on some organization stuff, or misunderstanding with your team, or just sitting and thinking what to do for too long, this 2 hours after 10 days, it's at least 200 kilometers of difference, at least. Just if you will be, at least, probably more. So this one makes massive difference because of the scale of the race. So we started quite well, and I started quite well. I was really into it, and then slowly it was dying, and I was falling behind, and altogether came in the spectacular way when we basically on the last day got lost on a straight road, which I still have trouble to believe that it happened. But hey, crazy X-Alps, even things like this can happen.
During the race, did you have any contact with any other athletes, or is it after the start everybody's just separated and on your own? Did you see anybody else during the race?
Oh yeah, of course. You constantly see other athletes, especially, of course, and during the first days, it's really everybody are together during the first 2-3 days, and then it spreads really throughout the Alps. Some people, if some people, especially big days, like good flyable days, really stretch there, because if someone bumps out on a good day, or for example doesn't cross the main ridge of the Alps in flight, and then the bad weather comes, this one really stretches the peloton. Some people are already 300 kilometers ahead, and some people struggle hiking in the rain, and and this is what happens. But I actually was in touch with various athletes during the whole race. So it's, on the one hand, you are alone, and for example, if you fly, most of the time you fly alone. It's nothing like, we call it, obviously it's a race, but it's nothing like cross-country race when you fly in a gaggle, obviously. But so you mostly fly alone, and this for this, I would say that experience from flying in New Zealand Alps, which are so empty and remote, it's a really good one, because you're just so used to flying alone. You're just like, okay, that's like, feels like home, you know. But sometimes you don't really hike with others. It really also depends on the athlete. Some athletes are very social and are keen to share, and it's really interesting. Some athletes are just looking at you and trying to just over race you on the road, very, very competitive. And it's okay, it's a race, it's absolutely fine, and we're all there to compete. But it's also really cool and super inspiring to see that. I would say that first 10 athletes that arrived to Monaco on the first in the first 10, they're all so the best of us are so helpful and so keen to share, and of course they are super motivated to race, to perform their best, but there's no option that you can't ask them what their plan is or where they are going. They will be happy to share with you, and it's super inspiring. You know, it just shows you how great they are, not only as pilots and athletes, but as people. So this itself, and generally learning, I mean, huge part of this experience when participating in Red Bull X-Alps, and this is why I'm so excited to be able to do it again, because it's not only that it challenges me personally at so many levels that it's really hard to explain in a finite time, but the opportunity to learn from some of these great pilots is just priceless. The learning curve during this race, it's so steep. I really don't know what could we compare it to. It's like I could be flying alone, cruising in the mountains, or playing cross-country competitions, or some, you know, or with some cross-country with my club for years, and wouldn't learn all the skills I wouldn't see all these things that I've seen and learned during X-Alps. And this one's super exciting. So I really felt it. It didn't come immediately, because during the race everything is so intense. It's for 10 or 12 days. You are in such a zone. You're just like, it's really difficult to process all what's happening. You just keep going, and it's just like, and I was also overstressing. So it's really difficult to process all these things. But and then of course I was completely gutted that with all the mistakes that we made. And it took me a few weeks. It took me a few weeks. I think at the end of the summer 2019, I really finally reconnected to all this skills, and I didn't really understand it. And then I realized that I started flying in a different way, and flying lines that I wouldn't fly before, or pulling off some really weird low saves. And it's like, wow, that was cool. I did it, you know. And I understand that that finally I processed all these lessons, and it just made me so much better pilot, and so much more confident pilot, so much better mountain pilot, and made me understand the mountains and the air in general in such a better way. So in general, it was this incredible experience, which I still feel the effects of it. I still feel it.
During the actual race, during the days, are you in contact with your team, your base team, with anybody at all, with meteorology, or with anybody helping you with decisions, or is it purely down to yourself?
So during the race, obviously you have your team with you, and then it depends on you how much support you really get from your team. There are different athletes, various athletes solve it in different ways. I definitely, I'm not I guess I'm not a good person to ask this question, to answer this question, because I really, the teamwork and my team preparation was probably part of the problem during X-Alps 2019. And it wasn't my team's fault, obviously. It was rather my fault that I didn't brief them properly. Maybe I didn't put the team in the right kind of configuration. I didn't quite understand what to expect, and I underestimated how important the teamwork is during this race. Partially because I always mostly fly alone, and I'm super happy with my Volbiva gear in the mountains, cruising around, and partially because it's part of it is also that it's definitely in some ways easier for Alpine pilots in the way the French, Swiss, or Austrians. There's such a big community of pilots and friends to choose from, who are already there, who are keen to participate, who are good pilots, who you know well, and you train together, you fly together lots, you know each other. It's a little bit different when you're a constant nomad and spend half of your time in New Zealand. It's difficult to come from New Zealand. Our community is very small, and not so many pilots too keen to travel to the other side of the world to participate in race, or to support you. Especially being a supporter, it's a hard work and no glory. So, yeah, they do all the dirty work, and then we athletes take all the glory out of it. So just
So how many? How many people?
So the ideal. Sorry.
How many people do you have in your team, and where did you get them?
I had 3 people with me, and the size of the team was good. It's just that probably we needed a little bit of experience how to manage particular situations. You don't really need. There are athletes who have massive teams with them, including their personal massage, physiotherapist and psychologist and meteor guy and everything, and that's great. There are also athletes with smaller teams, and personally I don't think I need an army with me. Just a good team of that everyone knows what the area of duty and expertise is, and just do their job, because at some point everybody gets so tired that's really it's getting a little bit confusing. Even simple things like losing things somewhere in your van is just taking time, and it's just when you're really on a sleep deprivation, it's getting, simple things become big problems after 10 days of sleep deprivation and stress and lack of sleep. So a lot of lessons for sure about the teamwork and briefing my team better this time. Yeah.
On a daily basis now, how is your day? Is it mostly training or working? What do you do at the moment?
I train a lot, and I need to actually. It's the middle of summer, so I train and fly basically. It's New Zealand, so it's not that maybe it's flyable every single day. It can be tricky sometimes with weather here, but when it is, it's beautiful. So and it's always interesting. And I train, obviously. It's a little bit mundane this time of training, because the volume of training for the race like this is so huge that at some point it's like, oh my God, again and again, how much can you hike? How much can you run? How many squats you can do in your life, But I also know that, if I don't, I would be so much behind the guys that it's a no-brainer. So it's just you just put your head down and do the work. I do now because we have a middle of summer, so it's flying in the mountains, it's flying on the coast. We have quite a stunning coast here, which is a great playground, because part of the thing, of course, is flying in the mountains. Part of the thing is the technical being able to take off with strong winds, or taking off from weird, tricky places, or landing in weird, tricky places, which is part of an adventure in X-Alps, which you don't necessarily do on your daily, on the daily basis, on your leisure time flying. So coastal flying is definitely very good for it. And I work-wise, I don't work too much. we grow tropical water lilies and lotuses here, where I am now. So this one paid the bills, and I coach other pilots, both on the coast and in thermals, in the mountains, in various ways, mostly individual coaching, and yes, and getting ready, briefing with my team, putting more attention into this aspect now, understanding more, and getting overexcited. Last time I was overly scared. This time I'm overexcited. I was like, yeah, bring it on.
You've had quite a rise. I mean, you started in 2014 in Poland, right? You were a mountain climber to begin with.
Yes, I was a mountain climber, and I kind of knew that flying existed because I saw it once at Lago di Garda in Italy, where I was on a rock climbing trip in Arco, and I thought, oh, that must be cool, but maybe I will do it when I'm retired, when I can't climb anymore, because it's like, what was I thinking? And then I hurt my elbow during climbing, and needed a break for 6 months break, and I just it's really funny because back then I didn't really know what I needed, what was it, because I thought it's just a physical training, because I trained so hard on daily basis when I was a climber, that I thought, okay, I will just run more or something. I was running like crazy, but it still didn't fill the gap. And now I know what I needed was this vertical movement, because I'm really air and space creature. This is my element, definitely. And back then I didn't quite understand it, but once I went for paragliding course, just this very, very beginning little hop from a little hill, and the first time I put my arse off the ground, I was like, yes, this is the thing. And especially when in Bassano del Grappa I made my first thermal, and the first thermal and the first little flap out, I wasn't quite sure how do you pull these ears and flying out. I basically landed with tears in my eyes, and it's like, that's it, now I want to fly, nothing else matters. And basically this is what I did. I chased it since then. I moved from I left my job and life in Poland, and
What was your job?
I was back then a strategist in a marketing agency.
Right.
We're making mostly design and packaging, and so I was basically making briefs for packaging of beer and butter and other things, briefing our designers. This is what I was doing, and it was really cool job in a small agency in a nice creative environment, but I didn't even look back once. I was just like, okay, I'm moving to Bassano, and I moved to Bassano. That was a very good choice, because it's Bassano del Grappa. It's a very, very famous place, but also very, very reliable and easy flying for such a beginner. It's safe, it's straightforward, and actually my first year was quite funny, because I was so into it. I was flying in between the rain, and just when no one else would be thinking of flying, I was like, yeah, I can just, top to bottom, this between the rain. And the local Italians were just like completely this mad Mata Polaka, mad Polish girl. And after the whole winter, 6 months of autumn winter scratching and flying in these conditions, I got quite efficient in in this particular way of flying on this ridge in weak conditions, and I started flying similar flights to some experienced local pilots. I was like, "Ooh, I'm such a good pilot." Typical intermediate syndrome. If you need a typical visual of the intermediate syndrome, this is me at this point. And I was like, "Oh, I'm such a good pilot now." And then the spring came, and when my first spring came, during 2 weeks of April, I did so many ridiculous things, and I had so many close calls. And then I went to Switzerland in April, to Verbier, and basically first thing I did, I put myself on a 20-meter pine tree, which was getting off. It was a nightmare, and that's a long story. My first spring is a long story, but the general feel is that I had so many close calls, and still I just kind of, some people have one close call and then they sit back and, okay, I have to think it through my approach. I needed quite like 4 or 5 just to really understand. But I survived it more with the luck than actual good decision making. And then also I made when I finally realized that I made this decision that I think we should all have at the back of our head, that I don't want to be lucky. I just want to make right decisions for me and for the conditions and for my skill level. And it sounds very simple, but it took me quite a while to understand how not to be lucky, but how to actually make right decisions. And of course, it's easier the more experience you have, the more you understand. At the beginning, it's always a little bit tricky. This is why so many accidents or incidents happen during this time when pilots think they're already so great, but not necessarily are already. Yes, and since then it was rather smooth, still intense. I went to France for a whole season, and then I moved to New Zealand, and then for next 5 years I've been cruising between summer in New Zealand and living in the van during European summer. So 2 summers. When I grew up on the north of Poland with long and dark winters, I always thought it would be so great to have 2 summers. So this is what I've been trying to achieve lately. Obviously, except this year, which because of COVID, I stayed here for winter, which wasn't bad, I would say. It's quite a good place to be. New Zealand is generally quite a good place to live. Beautiful nature, far away from all the world drama, so it's quite a comfortable space to live and to work. And so yeah, that's a short story of my adventure.
New Zealand's been good with 2016 women's champion and New Zealand distance champion as well in 2016. Is that right?
Yes, yes. I can't even. Was it 2016? Really? Yeah. Wow, that was a while ago. On one of the first seasons when I went to New Zealand, maybe even first season, I accidentally broke a New Zealand women's record. The thing in New Zealand is that to fly actual distance, let's say above 70 kilometers, you have to more or less, especially if you are in the mountain flying, because you can try to fly it on the flatland, not really my thing, but to fly in the mountains, you need to kind of go deep in the mountains, which is when you come from Europe or in general, it's a little bit challenging in the way of, I'll just run away from the sun. It's a little bit challenging in the way of commitment, because it's not like our Southern Alps and general New Zealand mountains are quite remote. So there's so many valleys without roads and so many places that when you want to fly some distance over some stunning mountains, it basically means that if you land, that's a long hike out, and probably even a night in the mountains. So I needed a moment to shift into this particular approach, and it's committing. And I guess this was the reason why not so many people at this point flew, and still not so many people fly actual cross country in these mountains, because you go for a day out, for a cross country day out, and you basically have food for 3 days and sleeping bag and and tarp and basically everything that you may need for a couple of days in the mountains. Now it's the best. That's my favorite way of flying and my favorite way of exploring. And even when I fly in Europe, I usually have some bivouac gear with me, because the idea of having, usually you don't need it, but the idea of being able to do it and go as deep as I can, it's extremely freeing. And this is my favorite mindset for flying, when I don't really think at all. I was like, oh, I need to go back for dinner, or how I'm gonna go back to my car or whatever else. It's just like, yeah, this is where the sky looks good, so I'm going there. And yeah, this is the real freedom of flying for me, being in the mountains in the self-sufficient way. So yes, I accidentally broke the women's record.
Yes.
And but then the next, or maybe 2 years later, I actually doubled it. And this was probably the most exciting flight for me, because it was like 175 kilometers, which again, I've flown more, but it's different in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, to fly it, you have to go through some real epic terrain and real deep lines and wild rivers, and like over wild rivers and mountains, and this one at this point, especially, it was a part of my quite a long, more than 2 week long vol bivouac that I did, and it was the first vol bivouac like this, first solo vol bivouac for me. I was at this point very cautious about being alone in the mountains. How will I get out of here? And then when I pulled it off altogether, and then after 8 hours in the air, saw the Mount Cook, where I flew to, like, which is the highest mountain in New Zealand. That was definitely, I had tears in my eyes. I'm generally quite emotional about my flying. A lot of laughing and crying. and that was definitely one of the very best highlights. So I remember mostly, at the end we like to focus a lot on places and kilometers and things like this, but at the end I mostly remember moments like this and emotions that come with it. So I would say that this was, until now, one of my very best flights and the most spectacular moments. Yeah.
I think that's a great place to leave it. I think we're almost out of time. Yeah, well, thank you. Really good place to leave it. Some fantastic stories there and some good, real adventures to be told. And I wish you all the very best for the X-Alps 2021.
Thank you, Regan. Thank you for inviting me. It was lovely to talk to you.
Enjoy it.
And yeah, all the best.
Take care. Bye.